Welcome to a brand new deep dive. We have a really incredible story today.
Yeah, we really do. It's honestly one of the most fascinating things I've read in a long time.
Right. So today our source material is a series of excerpts from this nonlinear history book. It's
Mm.
called Hronika Gornje Magle, or the Upper Fog Chronicles.
Which is just a great title to begin with.
It really is. And our mission today is to figure out the survival secrets of Gornja Magla, because this is a mountain village that basically defied logic. It defied massive empires and, modern economics just to survive for over 1,400 years.
Yeah, 14 centuries. It's wild.
So if you're listening to this right now, you probably operate in a modern world that is just filled with rigid systems, right? Like constant information overload, endless corporate bureaucracy.
Oh, absolutely. We all do.
And this deep dive is basically a masterclass in how you beat those systems. But you don't beat them by fighting them head on. You beat them through, strategic incompetence, weaponized hospitality, and just sheer unapologetic stubbornness.
I love that. Weaponized hospitality.
Yeah. Right, so let's just jump right into the origin story, because I think it perfectly sets the tone.
Oh, it really does.
Picture this. It's 642 AD. The Roman Empire is completely collapsing. The known world is descending into absolute chaos. And on this foggy hillside in the Balkans, there's this man named Vlastimir. And he is having a desperate tug of war with a cow.
A very stubborn, broad brown cow, yeah.
Exactly. So Vlastimir is pulling the rope, trying to keep his family moving away from the total geopolitical collapse happening right behind them.
Mm-hmm.
But the cow has stopped at a mountain spring and just refuses to take another step.
Just plants its feet.
Completely.
Yeah.
And Vlastimir is shouting, but his wife, Milica, she just takes a drink from that spring, looks at the dense fog rolling over the hillside, and she basically realizes the cow has made the executive decision.
The cow's charged now.
The cow's in charge.
Yeah.
The animal assessed the situation and decided, well, this is home now. So they stay for what is supposed to be this temporary settlement.
Right, just to rest.
Yeah. But that temporary settlement ends up lasting for 14 centuries.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because, how does that even happen?
Well, it's actually the perfect entry point for the source material, really. The core thesis of this text is that, most history we're taught focuses on kings drafting these grand treaties or armies fighting massive battles.
Oh, like the big macro events.
Exactly. But the actual story of human endurance looks very different on the ground. It's about ordinary people outlasting the grand plans of empires through inertia, through hyperlocal community and the sheer biological fact that quitting requires a lot of effort, whereas just staying put is easier.
Just letting the fog hide you. But hiding in the fog on a mountain only works until an empire comes looking for you, right? Because someone always comes looking to collect taxes.
Oh, inevitably. They absolutely do. And to understand how Gornja Magla survived, you have to look really closely at the visits from imperial tax collectors. The text actually details this extensively.
Yeah, this part is amazing.
So in 887 AD, a man named Theodoros arrives, and he's representing the Byzantine Empire. And then centuries later, in 1459 AD, an Ottoman bureaucrat named Ahmed shows up.
Two totally different eras, two different empires.
Right, but both the Byzantine and Ottoman taxation systems were highly sophisticated for their time. They operated on these really precise ledgers because, to extract resources, a centralized government needs rigid categorization.
They need the spreadsheets.
Basically, yeah.
Yep.
They need to know exactly how many households exist, what the agricultural output is per acre, and precisely how many head of livestock are grazing.
So if I'm an imperial auditor, right, hiking up this random mountain in 887 AD, I'm fully expecting some kind of rural resistance. Like I'm expecting people to lie, to hide their grain in the floorboards, or maybe even get violent.
Which was incredibly common, yeah.
But the villagers of Gornja Magla completely subvert that expectation. They don't fight Theodoros and they don't fight Ahmed.
Yeah.
They effectively just bury them alive in hospitality.
It's so brilliant.
It is. They respond to these audits by dragging out these massive tables and just feeding the auditors warm, fresh bread, incredibly strong mountain cheese, and smoked meats. And crucially, this is the best part, they pour them endless cups of rakicha.
Oh, the rakicha. Which, for the listener, is a local fruit brandy that absolutely burns the throat and aggressively clouds the mind.
Very aggressively. So they create this environment of intense, overwhelming friendliness.
Yeah, while simultaneously providing data that is administratively useless.
Right.
So when Theodorus is trying to tally the cattle for the imperial ledger, he points to some of the smaller animals and asks, are these counted as cows for tax purposes?
And what do they say?
The village elder, who is actively pouring him another drink, just smiles warmly and describes them as cow-adjacent.
Cow-adjacent. In 887 AD.
Exactly. And when Ahmed later attempts to conduct a census of the Coultry, he's told that chickens cannot be quantified. Why? Because they are, quote, chaos with feathers.
Chaos with feathers. You can't put that in a ledger.
You really can't. The village insists that chickens exist in this fluid state. Like, sometimes they belong to the family, sometimes they belong to the forest.
See, here's where it gets really interesting to me. I look at this, and I don't see simple rural ignorance. I see a highly sophisticated, deliberate defense mechanism.
Oh, absolutely.
It's basically the medieval equivalent of surviving a corporate audit by taking the auditor out to a 5-hour lunch and burying them in so many vague spreadsheets that they just give up.
Yeah.
It's a DDoS attack.
A DDoS attack.
Yeah, a distributed denial of service attack.
Mm-hmm.
In computer science, you take down a server by flooding it with so much useless traffic that it just crashes. The village is doing that to the imperial bureaucracy.
Oh, wow. That is a great analogy.
They're overwhelming the auditor with sensory data, the heavy food, the alcohol, the endless friendly chatter, and they pair it with answers that cannot possibly fit into a rigid system. The bureaucrat needs a binary answer. Is this a cow? Yes or no?
And the village gives them a philosophical treatise on the essence of a cow. What's fascinating here is that it's a brilliant administrative blockade. Both of these empires relied on the concept of the household unit to levy taxes. But Gornja Magla presented a living arrangement that was just impossible to categorize.
They could have kept shifting.
Right. A household might be one nuclear family on a Tuesday, but by Thursday it includes 3 cousins, and during the harvest it's just a collective of brothers sharing a storage shed. The categories completely break down.
So they just weaponized the friction.
Exactly. Economic friction. The villagers fundamentally understood that if they made the process of extracting the tax more expensive and time-consuming than the actual value of the tax itself, the empire would just leave.
Which is exactly what happened. The text actually notes that both the Byzantine and Ottoman empires independently reached the exact same conclusion in their official reports, centuries apart. They deemed the village, quote, not worth the administrative effort.
Which is the ultimate victory.
It really is. The bureaucrats couldn't punish the villagers because the villagers were being so genuinely helpful. So they just throw their hands up, file a confusing report back in Constantinople or Istanbul, and effectively grant the village centuries of autonomy.
Just by being too annoying to audit.
Exactly. But, okay, here is where the narrative hits a structural problem for me.
Okay, what do you mean?
So they successfully repelled outside authority, right?
Right.
But if you have a completely autonomous village, utterly isolated in the mountains for 14 centuries, I mean, human nature dictates they should have destroyed each other.
You think so, yeah.
I am having a really hard time buying that a community doesn't just implode from cabin fever and internal disputes over that amount of time.
Well, you would assume isolation leads to self-destruction. But counterintuitively, the social glue that held Gornja Magla together was actually a system of highly ritualized, eternal grudges.
Wait, okay, I'm going to challenge that premise strongly. You're telling me that hating your neighbor is a survival strategy. Usually a blood feud is exactly what tears a community apart.
Not if it's managed correctly.
How does a grudge function as social glue? Let's look at the example the text provides, because I think it's hilarious. The 1143 AD Great Pig Incident.
Oh, this is legendary.
Right. So Stefan Petrovich and Jovan Nikolic, these two proud farmers, they both claim ownership of the exact same massive 300-pound black pig with a notched ear.
That is a very large pig.
Huge. So they drag this dispute to the village priest, and the priest realizes that trying to rationally determine ownership is a complete trap. So he initiates a trial by ordeal. He says whoever physically catches the pig gets to keep it.
And the sociology behind the priest's decision here is fascinating, because he recognizes that the community needs a spectacle right now, not a legal ruling.
And it becomes pure slapstick.
Yeah.
Stefan and Jovan spend hours slipping in the mud, crashing into pickle barrels, just tackling each other while the entire village watches and cheers them on.
It's pure entertainment.
Completely.
Yeah.
And eventually both men are just lying in the dirt, totally exhausted. And the pig casually walks up to Stefan, farts directly in his face, and trots off into the forest, never to be seen again.
So neither man wins.
Neither man wins. But this one incident births a 900-year family rivalry between the Petrovich and the Nikolic. And the book notes this feud is actually still active today.
Yeah, the modern evolution of it is incredible.
Fast forward to August 2024. There's a wedding between a Petrovich and a Nikolic, and the Grudges evolved into what the author calls the Sarma zone.
The Sarma zone.
Baba Milena and Sofija Petrovich, the matriarchs of the two families, they each make 3 massive pots of sarma, stuffed cabbage rolls, and guests are trapped in this culinary hostage situation.
It sounds stressful.
It is. You must eat both versions. You must compliment both equally. And you cannot, under penalty of absolute social exile, express a preference for one over the other.
Right. So to address your earlier pushback on how this doesn't result in mutual destruction, you really have to look at the psychological function of performative friction.
Performative friction.
Yeah. In a small, isolated geographic space, human beings inevitably generate social tension. If you don't give that tension a structured outlet, it will erupt into genuine, violent conflict.
Oh, I see.
So the 900-year grudge over a pig, or the battle over who makes the best stuffed cabbage, it basically operates as a pressure valve. It organizes daily life, it provides entertainment, a sense of identity, and a safe, predictable way to express frustration. But the defining mechanism of this whole strategy is the boundary line.
Meaning they know exactly when to drop the act.
Precisely. The rivalry is a luxury strictly reserved for peacetime. The text emphasizes this a lot. Whenever Gornja Magla faced a real existential crisis, like a harsh winter, a famine, or an outside threat, the feuding families instantly suspended the Grudges.
They just switch it off.
Yeah. The performative friction evaporates, and they close ranks. The Grudges actually prove that they were a family, because think about it. You only maintain a 900-year argument with people you fundamentally intend to keep living next to.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. Which brings a completely different context to what happens when the fabric of the outside world actually tears itself apart. Because we've seen how they handle bureaucrats and how they handle each other. But what happens when the macro systems of government and economy completely collapse?
They drop the peacetime theater entirely. They just rely on extreme pragmatism.
Right. And the text provides 2 really stark examples of this. Let's start with World War II in 1943.
The geopolitical situation in Yugoslavia in 1943 was catastrophically complicated.
To put it mildly.
Right. It was this multi-front conflict involving foreign occupiers, but also a bitter, bloody civil war between different domestic factions.
And I just want to pause here for you listening, because we are looking at a wildly complex and violent period of history. Our goal today isn't to take a stance on the politics of the era.
No, not at all.
We are strictly looking at how the text describes this specific village reacting to the conflict. We're just conveying the historical reality of the text, not endorsing any ideology.
Exactly. And the village's reaction was incredibly revealing.
It really was. So, Grandmother Milika is living alone on the edge of the settlement. One night, a wounded communist partisan named Dragon stumbles to her door, bleeding heavily from a gunshot wound.
A terrible situation.
Yeah. She pulls him inside, patches him up, and hides him in her cellar. 3 days later, a wounded royalist Chetnik named Nikola arrives. He's also bleeding out. Now, these 2 factions, the partisans and the Chetniks, are actively fighting each other in a brutal ideological war.
If they discover each other in that house, they will try to kill each other on the spot.
But Milika takes Nikola in, bandages him up, and hides him in a different concealed section of the exact same cellar. Neither young man knows the other is there.
It's like a tense stage play.
Right. And according to the text, both of them are constantly giving Milika these impassioned ideological speeches while she's tending to them. The partisan is preaching about the coming socialist utopia, and the Chetnik is monologuing about restoring the monarchy.
So what does she do?
Milika just nods and tells them to eat their soup.
Eat your soup.
Yeah. She doesn't care about their grand visions for society. She just fundamentally refuses to let 2 young boys bleed to death on her literal doorstep.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the ultimate rejection of top-down ideology in favor of immediate human reality. Milika's loyalty is not to a political system, Her loyalty is to the biological preservation of life in her immediate vicinity. Because ideology is just an abstraction.
Exactly, an abstraction. But a bleeding boy in your kitchen, that is a reality. And that exact same prioritization of reality over abstraction is what saved the village during the second major collapse detailed in the book.
The 1993 hyperinflation.
Right.
Which, to understand why they could survive that economic collapse, we actually have to look at what was slowly creeping into the village a couple of decades earlier.
The television.
Yes. In 1974, a physical manifestation of the state finally breaches the fog. It's an iNiche television set.
iNiche was a massive, state-owned Yugoslav electronics manufacturer. Right, so getting this television was, ironically, the village finally plugging into the state system that they had actively avoided since the Byzantines.
It's a huge cultural shift.
The whole village crowds into the cafe to watch it. Suddenly, they're getting weather reports from Belgrade, and they're watching American Westerns. The older generation sits there actively debating whether to trust the slick meteorologist on the TV or the arthritis in their knees to predict the rain.
The irony being that the arthritis was usually a far more accurate metric for that specific local microclimate.
I bet it was.
But the television shifted their worldview. It introduced the concept of a broader, accessible reality.
But when the Yugoslav economy completely disintegrates in 1993, that broader reality proves to be incredibly fragile. The hyperinflation hits an incomprehensible 313% per month.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that number.
Let's just think about the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
Money becomes completely untethered from value. Prices are literally doubling every few hours.
Just chaos.
The text describes urban people carrying literal wheelbarrows of cash just to purchase a small bag of flour. Pensioners are receiving monthly retirement checks that, by the time they walk to the store, can only buy a single loaf of bread.
Because the currency is so worthless.
Exactly. It's so worthless that villagers are using billion dinar notes as wallpaper to insulate their attics, and they're stuffing them into stoves as kindling.
Because the paper itself retained physical utility, even when the economic promise printed on it totally evaporated. Money that cannot buy firewood can still burn to create heat.
Which forces a total economic pivot in the village. Peter, the village shop owner, he completely drops the use of currency. He puts up a handmade sign, pricing his goods in actual tangible value.
Back to basics.
Yeah, a loaf of bread costs 6 eggs or 2 hours of manual labor. A retired pensioner who used to be an engineer starts trading his ability to fix tractors for sacks of potatoes. It is exactly like losing your internet connection.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Think about when your home Wi-Fi goes down. Suddenly the cloud is gone, and you realize you only have access to what is physically saved on your local hard drive.
Right.
When the Wi-Fi of society went down in 1993, the banking system, the government infrastructure, the urban populations starved because all their wealth was in the cloud. But Gornja Magla didn't starve because they just fell back on their local hard drive.
And the local hard drive being their tangible skills, their agricultural land, their barter networks.
Exactly.
Money, much like a political ideology or an imperial tax code, is just a shared fiction. It requires collective agreement to function. And when that agreement shatters, the people who have built their entire identities and survival strategies around that fiction, they're left with nothing.
An accountant in the capital city with a briefcase full of trillions of dinars was suddenly destitute.
Destitute. But the villagers of Gornja Magla survived the hyperinflation because they never truly trusted the fiction in the first place. Their primary reality was always the soil, the physical labor, and the community network.
The village priest is actually quoted during this period saying, quote, "We survived Ottomans. We survived world wars. We will survive hyperinflation."
And they did.
They really did.
Yeah.
No physical empire or economic apocalypse could break this settlement. But the text reveals that modernity, specifically the digital age, accomplished what the Byzantines couldn't.
It's true.
It dissolved the village while simultaneously making it immortal.
Which is a profound paradox, really. The isolation that protected them for so long was finally shattered by connectivity.
The real shift happens in 2007 when the internet arrives in the village. Now, the diaspora, the children and grandchildren who had left for jobs in the cities, they're instantly connected via Facebook.
And this leads to a great story.
Oh, the Sarma scandal. The book details this massive scandal where Baba Malena's highly guarded, top-secret sarma recipe is accidentally posted on a public Facebook wall by a distant relative.
She must have been furious.
She is absolutely furious. She treats it like state secrets have been leaked to the press. But her anger totally shifts when she's shown a photo of an Australian Serb family. They're descendants of the village living in Melbourne, cooking her exact sarma recipe and connecting with their heritage.
See, that digital connection fundamentally altered the geographic reality of Gornja Magla. By making the whole world visible and accessible on a screen, the internet illuminated the limits of their physical mountain.
They could see what else was out there.
Right. The younger generation realized they didn't have to stay in the fog, so they slowly began to emigrate for university, for healthcare infrastructure, and just for modern careers.
And the book projects this timeline into the future. By the year 2089, the text notes that the last prominent resident A woman named Milena Nikolic dies quietly in her sleep, and the physical village is completely abandoned. There are no humans left living there year-round.
It's completely empty.
Yeah, but then, by 2157, the European Federation declares the empty stone houses a protected heritage village. So the descendants of the original family still visit in the summers, and the mountain spring still flows exactly as it did in 642 AD when Vladimir's cow stopped there.
Which is a beautiful image.
It is. So I have to ask you to synthesize this for us. Did the stubborn cow finally lose? Did technology and the modern spreadsheet finally defeat Gornja Magla?
Well, this raises an important question, right? It requires us to redefine what a village actually is.
Okay, how so?
We usually define a village by its geographic coordinates, a collection of stone houses on a specific misty hill. And if that is the definition, then yes, the physical settlement ceased to be inhabited. But the author argues that Gornja Magla transitioned from a geographic location into an idea.
It became an idea.
It decentralized. The cultural memory was preserved globally by the descendants in Toronto, Berlin, Melbourne. They still cook the sarma. They still tell the story of grandmother Milika hiding the partisan and the chetnik in the cellar.
And they probably still joke about the pig.
They definitely still joke about the 900-year grudge over the notched ear pig. So the village didn't die. It dispersed. It evolved from a temporary address into an eternal concept.
It survived as a foundation. It basically became a psychological backup drive for the people who left.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? We live in an era that is obsessively focused on scale, on nonstop technological disruption, and optimizing every waking minute just to climb a corporate ladder.
Exhausting, isn't it?
It is. And the 1400-year history of Gornja Magla proves that there is immense power in doing the exact opposite. There is survival value in simply being stubborn.
There really is.
There's profound security in trusting your immediate community, in feeding your neighbor even if you argue with them, and in recognizing that top-down systems, whether they're Byzantine tax codes, hyperinflated currencies, or just the rigid metrics of your modern job, they're always temporary fictions.
The fictions will eventually break. What lasts is the physical reality beneath them. You know, the land, the water, the practical skills you can perform with your hands, and the human beings you share your resources with.
Which leaves you with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Yeah.
Think about the stubborn cows in your own life. Think about those accidental, entirely arbitrary decisions like a delayed train, a random conversation, or just a gut feeling to stay put when everyone else was running that laid the foundation for exactly where you are today. And more importantly, ask yourself this. If tomorrow you were forced to completely abandon the currency of your modern life, if your job title vanished, your digital status was wiped, and the numbers in your bank account suddenly meant nothing, what actual tangible skills and community ties would you have left to fall back on?
It's a tough question.
When the giant Wi-Fi network of modern society inevitably drops, what is actually saved on your local hard drive?
It is the ultimate metric for how resilient your life actually is.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Upper Fog Chronicles. Until next time, stay stubborn and trust the cow.